Okay, guys, we're going to talk about lateral reading and actually do a practice run of what that looks like because this is the base to being able to determine if what you are reading is actually true. So, things that we got to think about. Who is behind that information that you're looking at? Because you just can't look at the article. We're pretty good at creating websites that look real anymore. So, who's behind it, who's writing it, producing that information. We're going to check that out. And why are they sharing it? What's the motivation? Are they being informational? Do they have a motive other than providing truthful information? And that's part of what we have to start investigating. And we're not even going to look at content yet. We're just going to look at who's behind the information. So with that in mind, we're going to take a look at our practice assignment. Okay, so here we go. So literally, this is the article that I asked you to look at. And it's from the Brookings Institute. It's an article on tax cuts, the gifts that keeps not giving. It's by Vanessa Williamson and Jackson Goad. It's from 2018. Okay, so honestly, if you looked at this, what would you know? I mean, it looks legit, right? So we're going to try to find out everything we can find out about where it comes from, who's behind it, and could they possibly be motivated by something other than providing truthful information, right? That's what lateral reading is, not just up and down. So we're not even going to read the article yet. We're going to do some research on who produced it and what might be their motivations, right? So the first thing I did is I'm giving you this worksheet to practice with. And here's the article. Things to think about. What is the sponsoring organization of the website? Who is it? Well, let's go look. It's the Brookings Institute, right? Second question. Do you know anything about this organization already? Well, no, I don't. So when I go back and look, I see Brookings Institute, and I see it's from something called FixGov, and it's got author's names. So I'm going to want to check these things out. I don't know about them yet, but here's what I do know because I'm a smart media literacy person, is I look up here at this URL, and it says brookings.edu. And as we know from domain registration, you cannot have a .edu domain unless you are an educational facility. That's a good clue, right? So I know that, okay? So that's the only thing I know, is it's something to do with education. What can I learn about this organization through reading laterally? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new tab, which I did. I looked up Brookings Institute Wikipedia. Remember, we're not going to depend on everything Wikipedia, but Wikipedia can give us a lot of really good information that's up to date and it's constantly monitored, and I'm going to check its sources. So when I look it up, I learn that it's referred to as Brookings. It's an American research group. It's a think tank in Washington, D.C. A think tank being a cluster of groups of information or research areas that create or analyze data, information, and research. That sounds legit, right? But we got to dig deeper. It conducts research and education, notice our educational tie, in social science, economics, and tax policy. And that's important to note because our article is about economics and tax policy. And it does that by looking at governance, foreign policy, global economy, and economic development. So all of that sounds above board, thumbs up, right? It tells us how it has programs in Washington, D.C. It has a global, also global station. So it's got a center that's in Qatar. It's got one in China. It's got one in India. So Brookings Institute is also global. That's important because when you're looking at research, it doesn't focus on just one area. It's legitimized if the broader it is. The bigger you are, the harder it is to hide, right? So that's a good thing. And according to the University of Pennsylvania and some other research, that this is the think tank of the year, the top think tank, and even a major publication, The Economist, calls the Brookings Institute America's most prestigious think tank. And here's the reference of the article. So if I wanted to even do more research, I could go down and look at that, right? It says it represents diverse points of view, and the institute itself labels itself as nonpartisan. That means it does not align itself with one philosophy, meaning left, which is often called liberal, or right, which is called conservative. If it labels itself as nonpartisan, it means it's just trying to provide information that doesn't lean one way or the other. That's what it's claiming. But let's see what other people say about it. It's been described as conservative, centrist, and liberal, meaning people have referred to it as all three. So guess what? That's pretty nonpartisan. Because sometimes words or presentations can lean one way or the other. If it claimed it was only one thing or only, the other, that would be something we would need to pay attention to. Because you always want, to try to find information that stays as much in the middle as it can. It just gives you information and it lets you make decisions. It doesn't use words or language or philosophies that point towards one thing or the other. That's a good thing. All right. So this looks promising. And then it talks about the history, because this obviously, it was founded in 1916. It's been around a long time. It's not something that just popped up yesterday in some kind of blog, right? And it can list that history, which is important. It talks about the influences on the policy, the think tank itself, which is good, and its political stance. And again, it labels itself as nonpartisan and backs that up. That's good. Okay, so even as I go down and I look at the funding, where it comes from, I have lots of references to back up claims or information about the Brookings Institute. All of this is above board and legit, looks positive, but I'm going to dig deeper. So I went to find out what FixGov was within that policy and found out that it is a blog that's written by people within the policy. So it's like a little area of specificity, which is not bad. It just means I want to dig a little deeper because it's tied to that institute. And sometimes things that are tied are not always representative of the institute itself. But as I dig into the author, who clearly has a connection, I went and looked her up, and there she is, Vanessa Williamson. And here's what's cool. She lists her CV. That stands for Curriculum Vitae. That, guys, is a resume with experience. So when I go look it up, here's her connection. She definitely works for them. And it explains that. She is a senior fellow who's been there. Guys, look at her educational background. Harvard University. She has a PhD in social policy. This is a well-educated woman within the area of tax reform and economy. So she's got a background in that. Now, of course, we can further validate that and make sure she's actually got that. But if you publish this and it were to be untrue, we could quickly find that out, because your background is something that's easily checkable. And if she puts it out there this publicly, that's a good sign that this is above board. Okay, so it often talks about the books that she's written. I mean, this is a well-educated woman. And when I looked up the secondary author, Jackson Goad, he also is employed there, And I can find connections to him as well within LinkedIn and other connections that all tie back and legitimize their authenticity. That's good, okay? Then I went one step further. And you don't have to do this, but I just wanted to show you this based on what we learned on research when it comes to understanding how to use your literacy points. So I did a link trace and I used the domain brookings.edu to see who linked to this institute, because that can quickly tell us a lot about that institute. So when I look, everything looks above board. I can even find if people find it legitimate, and Newsweek has described it as center left, meaning it's center. I mean, it provides pretty straightforward, truthful information. And I can also see inclusion and diversity. I can see their philosophies. I can read about them with information. As you can see, I'm not seeing any red flags here. Their social media, people's insights who are a part of it. So even just looking on the first page, I don't see red flags. So just to summarize, what would I write if I were actually doing this paper as a practice? Here's my article. So what's the sponsoring organization? Well, it's the Brookings Institute. It's FixGov and authors. And then I said, what do I know, if anything? And I didn't know anything, but I did look at the URL, and I could tell that it was an educational foundation. You don't get an edu as a domain unless you can validate that. And that's one thing I did note, which was an above board plus, right? And then I did my analysis. What can you learn about that? Based on references, the Brookings Institution is a think tank that focuses on economic issues. It identifies itself as nonpartisan, but has been referred to as a left, right, and centrist by outsiders. That's all good. I mean, it's been, some people think it's too left, some people think it's right, but most people don't consider it just one thing. It has a centered, nonpartisan as much as possible lean. And that is, if it claims to do that and then other people see that, that's a legitimized thing. That's a good thing. It is often quoted or referenced. It's a long history that can be traced. FixGov is a blog that focuses on financial matters. The two authors listed can also be traced. The head author has impressive credentials, including a PhD from Harvard in the area, to back up ties to their subject matter. Now, I haven't even looked at the subject matter, but as you can see, based on my lateral reading and research, I have a more positive look at this article because I can see that the information or about that I learned about who produced it, doesn't seem to have a manipulative viewpoint to present their information from. It tends to give me a more positive, this is more than likely going to be a legitimized source. And I can do that based on my analysis. What sources did I use? I used Wikipedia, as well as writing a search string to check my other outside connections using link::domain, right? And I would lean towards trustworthy at this point. I mean, based on what I've found, I would lean towards trustworthy. But I haven't even looked at my content yet, because content can give us clues as well. But do you see how lateral reading, checking out who's behind the information, as well as their motivation for providing that information, helped me to arrive at this decision before I even read my stuff? That's what lateral reading is, guys. And you're going to do one on your own now. Okay? Good luck.